Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Edge Concepts. In this tutorial, I'll be performing the cursor animations on a React.js application with the help of a frame animation library. So this is what I'm planning to achieve by the end of this tutorial. You can see that we have two circles there that are following our cursor whenever I move the cursor, and the circles have that springy animation or the bouncing animation whenever they move, and they follow our mouse whenever the mouse moves too. And also when there is an effect on a cursor, caused by the cursor on a given element, such as a hover effect, which I'm testing using the button that I have here, read more button. You can see that the mouse changes its the circles change the radius or the scaling, reducing the scaling so that we are able to clearly perform the hover effect. So enough of introduction, let's move to coding. In case you're new to this channel, my name is Aluku Godric. Welcome back. I have a brand new React.js application running in my browser. I also have my code in Visual Studio Code editor. So I'll start the coding of the two circles that will be following my cursor. So I'll head to my source folder and create a file. Let me create a folder first, subfolder, and name it components. Then I'm going to create two files here. I'll name the first one as cursor.js. Then I'll create another file, name it cursor.css. Then inside the cursor.js, I'll create a functional component. Then I'll be able to render my two circles inside here. So I'll start by creating an empty div that is going to represent the larger circle. I'll name this div large circle. I'll give it a class name of large circle. Then I'll create another div that is going to represent the smaller circle. I'll give it a class name of small circle. Then I'm going to render this inside my app.js. First of all, I will clear all the code that I have here and recreate a functional component. Then I'll import my CSS file. Then inside here, I'm going to render my circles by rendering the functional component, which is cursor.js functional component. Sorry about that, I just have to pass cursor here and make sure to import it at the top, as I've done. Then I will head to my cursor.js and style my circles. First I have to import the CSS file, which is cursor.css. Then I'll go ahead and style my circles. The first one is large circle, and the other one is a small circle. So let me just copy this and paste here. So I'll give both my circles a width of 64 pixel and a height of 64 pixel. Then I'll give them a border radius of 50%. I'll give them a background color of pink. Let me make it pinkish. So with the help of the code editor, which is the Visual Studio Code Editor color palette, I'll adjust the colors to make it brighter, like that. Then I'll concentrate on the smaller circle, adjust the changes by giving it a width of 16 pixel. I'll also give it a height of 16 pixel. I'll give it a background color of aqua. I'll also adjust this color to make it more brighter. Make it in high contrast with the background color that I'm going to set, which is going to be a dark blue. So if I navigate back to my application, this is what I have. I'm going to create a background color for my whole page. For that case, I'm going to my app.js. I'll give it the first div a class name of app. Then I'll head to the CSS file and clear the code that was the boilerplate comes with. Then I'll start styling my app div. Give it a background color of blue. Then with the help of the Visual Studio Code Editor, I will make it much darker, like that. I'll also give it a width of 100 view width and the minimum height of 100 view height. So if I save that, you should be able to see these changes. The next thing that I'm going to do is to create my call to action button that I'm going to put at the center. For that case, I'll move to the app.js and create a section that is going to enclose my button. Then inside here I'll have a button. Then I'll pass the text of read more. That. I'll also come to my app.css and style the button. I'll give it a background color of aqua. And then I'll give it a padding of 8 pixel top bottom and 16 pixel left right. Then I'll give it a border radius of 16 pixel. Then I need to style the section, so I'll proceed to my app.css and do that. I'll give it a display of flex. Then I want to align the items at the center and I justify the content at the center. This is to ensure that my button is vertically aligned at the center and horizontally aligned at the center. So if I save that and head to the application, this is what I have. Then I'll also make my section to have the height of the container, which is the app div. So I'll give the height to 100% and the width to be 100%. So if I save this, it should reflect here. Let me just give it a height of 100 bh. That. Yeah. Everything is working now. So the next thing I'm going to do is to give my cursor circles position of fixed so that it runs on top of all the other elements like that. There I have my circles. Then I'll also adjust the size of my button font by giving it a font size of 20 pixel like that. Yeah, it's much bigger now. So the next thing is to start working on these circles, you know, following my cursor. So I'll go to cursor.js and create two states here that are going to contain the initial position of the circles and later update those positions based on the movement of the cursor. So I'll introduce the useStateHook and make sure you import the useStateHook at the top. I'll pass a snippet, and the first one is going to be large circle. I want my large circle to have the positions of x and y as an object, so I'll set the x to be 0 initially, and I will set the y to be 0. I'll create another state here that is going to contain the positions of the smaller circle. So again, I'll use the useStateHook. I'll pass a snippet. I have ES7 extension that allows me to pass some snippets here, and the boilerplate will be generated automatically. So I'll create a small circle variable here, then set small circle. It's going to have the same positions as the large circle, so I'll copy that and paste it there, then save it. The other thing is I'm going to create the useEffectHook here, which allows my application to call for some functionality whenever the application completely loads. So I'll introduce the useEffectHook. I'll pass the snippet to call it automatically. Start by removing these variables that are here. Then the first thing I would like to do is to create an event based on the mouse movements, which is on mouse move event. So when the useEffectHook runs, I want to call an event which is a window.addEventListener. The name of the event is going to be on mouse move, not on mouse move, but mouse move. Then I'll also call a function whenever that event takes place. I'll create a function later. I'll name it mouse move also. So let me just come here and create that function. I'll create it as an arrow function. Sorry about the spelling error. And this is supposed to be an equal sign. Oh, sorry about that. Here, this function is going to take an event as a parameter. Whenever that function is called, for now we want to test the figures that we are going to get by just console logging event, like that. Then we also want to remove our event down here. So let me copy this, paste it there. Then instead of adding event, we want to remove event listener. And the name of the event listener is mouse move, like that. Save the changes. Then I'll move to my browser and inspect the console. That. So you can see we have so many events. Let me just, because we have had quite a number of mouse movements. So let's inspect this. It is an object. An object is returned, and this object has several properties. And the area that we are going to concentrate are the properties of client X and the client Y, which represent the position of the mouse from the X and the Y axis respectively. So we need to access these variables by later updating the positions of our circles depending on the positions of the mouse. So let me minimize this. Then instead of console logging, we are going to adjust these positions. First, I'm going to adjust the position of the large circle. Sorry about that. I'm going to set large circle. So I'll set it to, of course, they are going to be the positions of X and Y respectively. So X is going to be the client X, which is the property of the event, which is an object. So this is going to be E dot client X, capital X, like that. Then for Y, it's going to be E dot client Y, capital Y, of course, like that. Then I'll do the same for the smaller circle. Let's put it there. Then change this to small circle. Let me just copy this and paste there, like that. Like that. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is to adjust the positions of my circles using a frame of motion animation library. You can pause the video and install the frame of motion module in your project by running npm install frame of motion. Like that. So I'll not be doing this because I have already installed this in my application. Then after you've done the installation, you need to import the frame of motion, the motion component from frame of motion library. So I'll do the same here. Then I'll prefix this motion component to my divs, like that. Then I'll also pass the animation states to my divs. So I'll pass only one state here. For frame of motion, we always have three states of the animation. That is the initial state, the animate state, and the exit state. For this case, when our application loads, we already have our circles being displayed. So we are only going to trigger the animation once the mouse has started the movements, and therefore we shall concentrate on the animate state only. So I'll pass animate prop here. The animate prop is going to be an object representing the X and the Y positions of our circles. So for my larger circle, I'm going to take the X position as the position that I set here as my state. I did set it as large circle like that. And then I'll also do the same for the smaller circle, but adjust the values so that instead of setting my X as a large circle, I'll set it as small circle. But remember, this was an object having two positions, X and Y. So for the X, it's going to be large circle.x, and for the small circle is going to be small circle.x. Then I'll also do the same for the Y. Let me just copy this, then have my comma there, then change this to larger circle.y, and then for the smaller circle, I'll also copy this. Let me make this adjustment to Y. Then I'll also paste that, make this adjustment to Y, and this one to Y also, like that. So if I make the changes, let's move to the application and see if everything is working. So you can see now our circles are following the mouse, but there is that sudden movement, snappy movement, and we want to make it smoother. We also want the circles to have their centers at the tip of the cursor. Therefore, to be able to achieve that first, remember our circles have a width, and therefore for the tip of our mouse to lie at the center, we have to subtract a half the width of the div, or we subtract the radius of the circle from the new positions once the animation has taken place. So to be able to achieve that, we can just come to our divs here. For the larger circle, its radius is supposed to be 32 pixels, so we subtract that. We just subtract 32 as a number. We also subtract 32 here for the Y. Then for the smaller circle, it was 16, and therefore we subtract 8. And we do the same for the Y. We subtract 8. Then we save the changes. Let's wait for the application to reload. It has done that. Then if I navigate back to the application, you can now see that the circle's centers rest at the tip of our mouse. So the other thing that I want to introduce is the springy animation. I'll just adjust a few changes at the transition prop of the frame of motion library. So I'll move to my animate state, which is this one here. Apart from animating the X and the Y positions of the div, I'll also introduce the transition, which takes care of all time related animations. That is, the speed, can be the acceleration of the mouse and the resting of the mouse. So I'll introduce transition as a property, and this is going to be an object. I will declare the type of the transition, which is going to be spring. I want to create that bouncing effect you had seen in the introduction of the video. Then in the spring type of transition, I also want to declare the mass of the spring. For the larger circle, I'm going to give the mouse as 3. Then I'll copy this and only adjust the mass for the smaller circle. So I'll come here and paste that. Then I'll adjust that to 2, like that. So save the changes. So you can see the kind of the animation I was talking about. The other thing I want is to make sure these circles do not prevent us from performing the pointer events of the mouse, such as the click events, the hover events. So that's why I created the button here to test that out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to create the hover effect that changes the pointer of my mouse to cursor, of my cursor. Change it to my cursor to pointer whenever I hover over the button. So to do that, I'll proceed to app.css where I've done the styling of the button and create the hover effect here. So when the button is hovered over, I want the cursor to be pointer, like that. But if you navigate to the application and try to move the mouse there, it's not working. So to achieve that, I'll want to come to my cursor.css, and where my circles are, I'm going to declare the pointer events to none, so that our circles do not have those mouse events, but the pointer events of the mouse, but to allow the underlying elements to have those effects. So if I now navigate back to my application and hover over, you can see that the cursor changes to pointer, like that. So that is what I wanted. The other thing that I want is to adjust the width or the scale of the circle whenever it is hovered over an element, so that the cursor can take the click event or hover events. So to do that, I'm going to create a variable on my app.js using the useStateHook, and I'm going to name this variable as scaling, like that. The initial state of this scaling is going to be false. Save that. Then I'm going to pass this scaling as a prop to my cursor here. Then later I'll move to the cursor.js and access that scaling variable. Then I'll come to my larger circle, that is the one that I want to reduce its scale. So I'm going to create a style prop here. Then in this style prop, the CSS property that I want is the scale, which is going to rely on this scaling variable. So when the scaling variable is true, I want to set the scale to to 0.1, but if it's false, I want to set the scale to 1, like that. So let me save the changes. It's saying that scaling is not defined. So I have to introduce, I did introduce that at the wrong place. It's supposed to be at the functional component that I created here. Sorry for that. So let me save that. Then I'll also move to my app.js and create the mouse event on my buttons, which is on mouse enter. So when the mouse enters the button, I'll create an anonymous function here that is going to set my scaling to active or true, like that. But when the mouse leaves the application, which is going to be on mouse leave, sorry, I'll create the same anonymous function. So let me just copy this, paste it here, but I'll set this back to false, like that. So save the changes. Let's now move to the app and see. You can see it changes to a tiny circle so that we are able to see that clearly. So this is what I wanted to code for today, and I think I've achieved the purpose of this video. Or maybe before I close the recording, the other thing I would like to do is to create that smoothness by going to where the circles are in the cursor.css and create the transition animation here. I want to transform. I'll transform my circles at a time of duration of 0.1 seconds. Let me make it 0.5, like that. So if I make the changes, the transformation is quite slow, so I'll introduce the time to 2 seconds. So that is better. I can even take it back to 0.1 until I achieve the desired transition speed. Good. So guys, this is how you can achieve cursor animations in your React.js application with the help of Framer Motion Animation Library. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. See you in the next tutorial.